So I am tremendously pleased to be here today. Distinguished panel, and I see lots of friends out in the audience, a lot of the people who taught me how to do this. And I'm grateful to them. I might mention some of their names during the course of my talk here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Flight 3, and you see the title of my slide there is Achieving Readiness via Ease of Sustainment and Modernization. It's what are we doing now to make readiness better in the future? And you'll see with the first slide, I will start with, here's the slide, the most important thing when you're designing a new ship, the first thing you should do is go read Aristotle's Ethics. Now that might seem a little counterintuitive, but I want to bring out a few things. I'm going to talk about some actual technical examples, but I'm going to spend most of my time on this slide. The first thing I want everyone to notice, that paragraph at the top, which I will not read, but that's from the first paragraph of Aristotle's Ethics. He's talking about all these different, it's a question of what makes something good, and he talks about all these different things, these pursuits, and the good they follow. And he says the pursuit of shipbuilding is a ship. So ask yourself, why did he include shipbuilding in that list? I mean, is it really, to the average person, as important as health and medicine and prosperity? And then you think about it, so think about the world he lived in. He lived in a unique society, a free democracy that was a maritime power, whose enemies were either dictatorships with large land armies, or they were alien fanatics driven by, to what to the Greeks seemed bizarre beliefs. And the only way they could preserve their society was to have ships and a navy that could guarantee their access to commerce and provide for security. And all of a sudden, am I talking about 2,400 years ago, or am I talking about today? So that gets you thinking that some things are eternal. So when we start talking about, and for those of you who didn't hear Admiral Searing's remarks, you know, the exciting things that are going on with directed energy weapons and distributed lethality, and we think about all this new technology. The new technology is exciting, but there are certain principles that are enduring. And that's why ancient wisdom, if it doesn't tell us how to make sure that we have the right gas turbine generator on the Flight 3, it certainly tells us the kind of things we want to think about in order to make what we do, what our efforts are, good. And so Aristotle, one of the key things from the ethics that he's famous for is the golden mean. And if that's a good example in your personal behavior, it's an even better example when it comes to shipbuilding. When we looked at what we were going to do to turn the Flight 2A into the Flight 3, one thing that was in our mind at every point is everything comes with a cost. And that the right point is usually the middle point between the two extremes. So I'm going to show you some things that were said of, well, why can't we change this, or why shouldn't this be better, or can we make this easier? And for all of them, the answer is maybe where we were at one extreme, we move closer to the center. But remember that if you like something, if you like it a whole lot, you're getting away from that mean, from that sweet spot in the middle of two extremes. So just as Aristotle talked about courage, temperance, self-control, I'm going to talk a little bit about reconfigurability, commonality, and affordability as being the center point between two extremes. And that was the design philosophy that drove us as we were modifying the Flight 2A to get to the Flight 3. And with that, I will go to my next slide. So just to refresh everyone's memory, what's a Flight 3? A Flight 3 is a Flight 2A where we take off the Spy 1 DV and replace it with a Spy 6. And if it were that easy, it'd be really easy. Spy 6 brings a couple of new demand signals. It's a radar that takes more electrical power, so we had to do modifications to the power grid, operate at a higher voltage, higher generating capacity generators. It takes more cooling, so we had to change the cooling system. And when you do all that, you change the weight structure of the ship. And if you want the ship to have a suitable growth margin for weight and stability in its life cycle, you have to do something to move the weights around the ship. So you look at that, that's basically Flight 3 in a nutshell. But it gave us some opportunities to look at what design trade-offs were made at the beginning of the ship's life, and is that still where we want to be? So let's go with the next slide. Let me talk about something here. I'm going to go to, I'm sure everyone here is familiar with AMOD and the success of that. I see my partner in crime, Tom Trugan, sitting there in front of me, my classmate from the Naval Academy. Awesome, awesome capability we have delivered with John Paul Jones that are getting ready to be delivering that same capability very soon here on the first of the DDG restarts on 113 and 115, the John Finn and the Rafael Peralta and the Arleigh Burke, and I think we have Barry is close, and I think Benfold is close, and she's there, right? So, you know, we're starting to turn them out now, an awesome combat capability. But in backfit, my, is it hard to rip all of that stuff out of CIC and then try and pack the new stuff in. And I remember when this was going on, one of the speakers yesterday, Admiral Roden, when he was N96, N96, right? When he was N96, he and I had a special conversation, and he said, Mark, why is it so hard to get all of this stuff out of the ship? And I said, sir, in good computer programming language, that's not a bug, that's a feature. We did that on purpose, and we did it for a reason. If you take your most vital combat system components, your most vital computers, your most vital consoles, and you bury them inside a ship behind several layers of steel, and some of that steel has extra armor in it, and then you get as much of the ship structure between the outside of the ship and your most vital parts of your combat system, you render that combat system much more survivable to damage, which is what we told the NAVSEA engineers to do back in the early 80s when we were designing the DDG-51. Because we didn't think that we might want to rip the combat system out 20 years and put in a new one later. That wasn't on the plan. Now we're thinking, well, maybe we do want to rip the combat system out on a regular basis. Well, some of our European allies, you've seen them, have reconfigurable ships, and they kind of have an exoskeleton. The most vital parts of their combat system are towards the skin of the ship, or sometimes exterior to the skin of the ship, right kind of in the line of fire, but it's very easy to pull it off and put something new in. So I don't like that either, because I still want the survivability, but everything comes with a cost. Everything comes with a cost. So we said, well, how can we dial it back from one extreme to another? And we came up with rapid reconfigurable routes for the Flight 3. Maybe we'll move some of that structure around. And maybe somewhere, places where we have things that are welded structure, we'll use bolted structure. And we'll, for some of the things that where we know we're probably in a midlife going to want to move things around, we're going to make it easy while maintaining as much of that survivability as possible. We're going to make a trade, and we're going to try and get to that center point. So that's Aristotle's golden mean driving the design of a ship. But we shouldn't fool ourselves. Every time we make a decision, it comes with a trade. So as we get to be more flexible, and this is something, the next step, what we're looking at is, well, could you be really flexible, get rid of welded foundations, go to bolted foundations, and those things are being looked at, and they should be looked at. But for the same amount of weight, bolting versus welding takes more space, takes more weight. That means you can have less of it, or you're going to have a bigger ship to have more of it. And then you have to ask yourself what's worth the trade. Depending on whichever direction you go in, the important thing as professionals is that we understand what point on that curve we want to be at, and we get there on purpose instead of by accident. So let me go to another example. Slide. Okay, this is just another kind of, again, it shows you the concept here for the rapidly reconfigurable routes, that you have certain spots where the interior of the ship, there's no distributed systems. So when you start cutting, you save yourself having to cut through a distributed system and then retest it or re-repair it after a fail. And some of those cases you use bolted access plates instead of a fully welded structure. Slide. Okay, so then go back to my Aristotle slide, and I want to make a point, and then I'm going to come back to this. So, commonality. We hear lots of things about commonality. So what's the midpoint that we're trying to achieve there? If you change every time you can, you have a force structure that is impossible to support. If everything's the same, you never make progress. You never take the next step down the road of getting better and delivering greater capability. So now let's go 2 slides here and we'll talk about TI-16. So this, again, all credit to my partners in crime from IWS. I'm the benefit as the ship guy for a lot of this. I publicly praise my participating program managers, and then in private we duke it out. But, so for some of that public praise of my participating program managers, what are we trying to together accomplish here? I want a combat system that provides to the greatest capability the same look and feel and training to the operator. And I want, even if I have two ships with different technical insertions, within a technical insertion, I want as few different components as possible so that you have ease of maintainability, so that you have ease of sparing, so that you have ease of fielding. So that produces combat capability, not only, as Admiral Grady said, that's Tiffany, but something that is sustainable, so you have persistent combat capability. But I don't want to stop making progress, because after TI-16, we're going to get to a point that I need more computing power, and I need the next generation of capability in order to handle the next generation of threat. So I want it to be able to handle that next generation when the time comes. So then you get to common building blocks within TI-16. This has the advantage of the TI is common between both Aegis and the SSDS. So we're using common components. It reduces logistics, it reduces training, all of that. It enhances the ability to field your computing plant and your combat capability over time and do it in a manner that's smart, but at the same time gives you the ability to go forward with improving the capability and advancing the state of art as you need to in order to continue to field superior warfighting capability. I think I have one more slide. Nope, that's it for me. So when we get to the questions, I look forward to your questions. Every time I come to these, I'm always just kind of amazed and humbled. I see John Geary and Larry Rogers sitting out there, who I remember being, and I see a lieutenant back there somewhere in the audience, and I think back to when I was a young lieutenant, you know, not that long ago. It can't be that long ago. And I looked at guys like John and Larry, and I thought, wow, they know so much. And then I'm up here thinking, I don't know any more than I did when I was a lieutenant. So anyway, it's great. And it's great to see so many former mentors and great people here in the crowd today. Thanks.